Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Reading Hours, where we dive deep into the literary masterpieces that have shaped our understanding of the world. Today, we embark on a journey down the mighty Mississippi, into the heart of one of America's most enduring and controversial novels. Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Published in 1884, this book wasn't just a sequel to the beloved The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It was a seismic shift in American literature. Twain, born Samuel Langhorne Clemens, drew heavily on his own experiences growing up on the banks of the Mississippi, imbuing his stories with the vibrant language, diverse characters, and unique cultural tapestry of the pre-Civil War South. Huckleberry Finn is often hailed as the great American novel, a declaration that speaks volumes about its profound impact on subsequent generations of writers and readers alike. Its significance lies not only in its groundbreaking use of vernacular language, which broke away from the more formal literary styles of the time, but also in its unflinching examination of some of America's most deeply entrenched social issues, particularly slavery and racial prejudice. Twain himself referred to the novel as a picaresque tale, following the episodic adventures of a roguish, yet deeply moral, protagonist. But Huckleberry Finn is far more than a simple adventure story. It's a biting satire of a society riddled with hypocrisy, a powerful exploration of freedom versus civilization, and a profound coming-of-age narrative. The novel challenges conventional notions of morality, forcing readers to confront the stark contrast between societal norms and individual conscience. At its core, it asks us to consider what it truly means to be civilized, and whether the rules of society always align with what is just and humane. However, Huckleberry Finn's journey hasn't been without its storms. From the moment of its publication, it sparked heated debate, and even today, it remains one of the most frequently challenged books in American schools. The controversies primarily revolve around its language, specifically Twain's accurate portrayal of the pervasive racial slurs used during that era. While some argue that the language is offensive and promotes racial stereotypes, others contend that removing or altering it would sanitize the historical reality and undermine Twain's critical intent. Twain, through Huck's innocent yet perceptive eyes, exposes the inherent cruelty and absurdity of slavery, using the very language of the time to highlight the dehumanization it wrought. The novel forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about America's past, and its continued relevance lies in its ability to provoke critical thinking about race, morality, and social justice. Beyond the controversies, Huckleberry Finn is a masterclass in character development. Huck, with his unvarnished honesty and practical common sense, stands in stark contrast to the romanticized ideals of his friend Tom Sawyer. His internal struggles, particularly his moral dilemma over helping Jim escape to freedom, form the emotional backbone of the narrative. Jim, too, is a character of immense depth and dignity, transcending the stereotypical portrayals of Black individuals in literature of the period. bond, forged on the river, becomes a powerful symbol of human connection and empathy that defies the arbitrary divisions of society. The Mississippi River itself is more than just a setting. It's a character in its own right, a vast, ever-changing entity that offers both refuge and peril. It represents freedom, escape from the confines of societal expectations, and a space where the rules of the land no longer apply. Yet, even on the river, the pervasive influence of civilization and its prejudices continues to haunt Huck and Jim. As we embark on this in-depth summary, prepare to be transported to a time and place that, while historically specific, resonates with timeless questions about human nature, morality, and the pursuit of true freedom. Get ready to witness Huck's transformation, a journey not just down a river, but into the depths of his own conscience. Let's begin our adventure with our story opens with Huck Finn, the mischievous and independent spirit we first met in the adventures of Tom Sawyer. Reflecting on the events of that previous adventure, specifically how he and Tom had stumbled upon a treasure, making them both rather wealthy for boys their age. Now, with a considerable sum of $6,000 in the bank, Huck finds himself reluctantly adopted by the widow Douglas and her stern, religious sister, Miss Watson. Their primary goal is to civilize him, a term that grates against Huck's wild, untamed nature. They insist on proper manners, regular schooling, and a strict adherence to religious instruction, all of which feel like shackles to the free-spirited Huck. He despises the confining clothes, the tedious lessons, and the endless prayers that seem to have no real meaning to him. He yearns for the carefree days of roaming the woods and living by his own rules. The very idea of civilization, as presented by the widow and Miss Watson, seems to Huck to be synonymous with boredom, hypocrisy, and an endless list of things he is not allowed to do. He sees their efforts to civilize him as an attempt to strip him of his individuality and force him into a mold he simply doesn't fit. Despite their good intentions, the widow Douglas and Miss Watson represent the very societal constraints that Huck instinctively rebels against. They are products of their time, believing wholeheartedly in the righteousness of their way of life and the importance of instilling those values in Huck. However, their methods often come across as stifling and rigid, particularly to a boy who values freedom above all else. Huck's internal monologue frequently highlights his struggle to reconcile their expectations with his own desires, and he often finds himself feigning compliance while secretly plotting his escape. He is a pragmatic boy, and he recognizes that outwardly conforming to their rules occasionally buys him some peace, but his heart is never truly in it. His discomfort with their attempts to civilize him is palpable, and it establishes the core conflict of the novel, the individual's struggle against the conventions of society. He would much rather be dirty and free than clean and constrained. This initial setup immediately establishes Huck's character as an outsider, a boy who views the world with a skeptical eye and a deep-seated distrust of authority. He is a keen observer of human nature, and he quickly discerns the underlying hypocrisy in many of the so-called respectable people around him. His struggle with the widow and Miss Watson is a microcosm of his larger struggle with society throughout the novel. A constant push and pull between the comforts and constraints of civilization and the raw, untamed freedom of the wild. He is a boy who is trying to figure out where he belongs in a world that seems to demand conformity. And his innate sense of right and wrong, though often unarticulated, begins to guide him even in these early stages of his journey. The internal conflict he faces between what he is told is right and what he feels is right is a foundational element of his character arc. His initial resistance to their civilizing efforts is not born out of malice, but out of a genuine desire for autonomy and an intuitive understanding that their way of life is simply not for him. He longs for the simplicity and honesty of life lived on his own terms, unburdened by the expectations and judgments of others. This longing sets the stage for his eventual flight from their home and his grand adventure on the river. Just as Huck begins to settle into the discomfort of his new, civilized life, a chilling figure reappears, his drunken, abusive father, Pap. Pap, a truly despicable character, learns of Huck's newfound wealth and immediately demands it, seeing it as his right as the boy's father. His return casts a dark shadow over Huck's already uneasy existence, turning his home into a place of fear and violence. Pap is the antithesis of everything the widow and Miss Watson represent. Yet in his own way, he is just as controlling and destructive. He represents the underbelly of society, the poverty, ignorance, and brutality that often fester beneath a veneer of respectability. Pap's alcoholism makes him unpredictable and dangerous, and he frequently beats Huck, threatening to take all his money for his own selfish ends. He despises Huck's schooling, seeing it as a weakness and a betrayal of their shared, unrefined existence. Pap believes that education only makes people soft, and that Huck is becoming too stuck up for his own good. He resents the widow Douglas's attempts to educate Huck, fearing that it will make Huck superior to him and diminish his control over his son. This resentment manifests in tirades against the government and educated people, revealing Pap's deep-seated prejudice and ignorance. He is a man consumed by bitterness and a sense of victimhood, always blaming others for his own failures. His presence is a constant source of terror for Huck, who lives in fear of his unpredictable outbursts. One day, Pap, in a drunken rage, kidnaps Huck and takes him to a secluded cabin in the woods across the river, far from the reach of the widow Douglas and her civilizing influence. Here, Huck is held captive, subjected to Pap's tyrannical rule and even more frequent beatings. Life in the cabin is primitive and brutal. Huck is forced to help Pap with chores, and their days are filled with fishing, hunting, and Pap's increasingly violent drunken stupors. Despite the constant fear, Huck, with his characteristic resourcefulness, begins to devise a plan to escape. He is desperate to get away from his father's tyranny and regain his freedom, even if it means sacrificing the relative comfort of the widow's home. The cabin, initially a symbol of isolation and despair, becomes the setting for Huck's ingenious escape. He meticulously plans his fake murder, using a pig's blood and a carefully staged scene to create the illusion that he has been killed by robbers. This elaborate ruse demonstrates Huck's remarkable cunning and his ability to think quickly under pressure. He understands that simply running away won't be enough. He needs to completely disappear to escape Pap's relentless pursuit. His decision to stage his own death is a drastic but necessary measure, highlighting the desperate circumstances he finds himself in. The meticulous execution of his plan from dragging a sack of rocks to the river to leaving a trail of bloody evidence, showcases his determination and his pragmatic approach to survival. He leaves a trail that would lead anyone to believe a struggle occurred, and that he was the unfortunate victim. His motivation is clear: to be free from Pap and from the societal expectations that are closing in on him. This act of self-preservation is a pivotal moment, marking Huck's decisive break from both his abusive father and the constraints of societal expectations. He is no longer just running from something. He is running towards something true, unadulterated freedom, a concept that will define his journey. With his elaborate fake death successfully convincing everyone, including his father, that he is no longer among the living, Huck makes his escape to Jackson's Island, a small, uninhabited piece of land in the middle of the Mississippi River. He finds solace and a sense of profound liberation in the solitude of the island, believing he has finally achieved the freedom he so desperately craves. He builds a small camp, fishes, and enjoys the simple, unburdened existence he has always dreamed of. The island becomes his sanctuary, a place where he is truly his own master, free from the dictates of both Pap and the well-intentioned but stifling Widow Douglas. However, his solitude is short-lived. To his astonishment, he discovers another inhabitant on the island, Jim, Miss Watson's enslaved man. Jim, too, has run away, having overheard Miss Watson discussing plans to sell him down the river to New Orleans, a prospect that filled him with terror. His escape is a desperate act of self-preservation, a flight from a future of even greater hardship and separation from his family. The accidental reunion of Huck and Jim on Jackson's Island is a pivotal moment in the narrative, forging an unlikely alliance that will become the emotional core of the novel. Their initial encounter is marked by a mixture of surprise and caution. Jim, fearing capture, is initially hesitant to trust Huck, and Huck, raised in a society where enslaved people are considered property, grapples with the implications of helping a runaway. Yet, a shared vulnerability and a mutual desire for freedom quickly transcend their social differences. Huck, despite his societal conditioning, instinctively understands Jim's plight and recognizes his humanity. He feels a kinship with Jim, an unspoken understanding that they are both outsiders, both striving for a better life. This moment on the island marks the true beginning of their journey together, a journey that will challenge Huck's preconceived notions about race, morality, and what it truly means to be human. They decide to join forces, recognizing that their chances of survival and freedom are greater together. Jim is resourceful and practical, with a deep knowledge of the river and the natural world, while Huck brings his cunning and his ability to adapt to any situation. Their bond begins to form out of necessity, but it quickly deepens into something more profound. Jim, despite being an enslaved man, becomes a surrogate father figure for Huck, offering him guidance, comfort, and a steady moral compass. He is wise, compassionate, and deeply human, qualities that Huck rarely encounters in the civilized world. Their shared existence on the island strengthens their connection, and Huck begins to see Jim not as property, but as a person with feelings, dreams, and aspirations. This burgeoning friendship is a radical departure from the societal norms of the time, where the idea of an interracial friendship, let alone one between a white boy and a runaway enslaved man, was almost unthinkable. Their time on Jackson's Island is a period of relative peace and discovery, but it is also a temporary respite before they must face the harsh realities of the world. Their discovery of a wrecked steamboat, the Walter Scott, on the river provides them with a source of supplies and a sense of adventure, but it also exposes them to the darker side of human nature, hinting at the dangers that lie ahead. Huck and Jim's peaceful existence on Jackson's Island is abruptly shattered when they realize their sanctuary is no longer safe. Huck, ever the cautious and observant one, disguises himself as a girl and ventures back to the mainland to gather information. This cunning ruse, a testament to his quick thinking and adaptability, allows him to move freely and overhear conversations without raising suspicion. He learns that his supposed murder has been widely publicized, and both he and Jim are now the subjects of a frantic search. The reward for finding Jim is considerable, and the townspeople are eager to claim it. More alarmingly, Huck discovers that there are plans to search Jackson's Island, meaning their hiding spot will soon be compromised. The impending danger forces them to make a difficult decision. They must leave the safety of the island and embark on a perilous journey down the Mississippi River. This marks the true beginning of their epic adventure, a flight towards freedom on the unpredictable waters of the great river. Their vessel is a sturdy raft, a simple yet effective means of transport that will become their home, their sanctuary, and their escape route. They intend to travel downriver to Cairo, Illinois, a free state where Jim will finally be safe from the clutches of slavery. The journey down the river is fraught with danger and uncertainty. The river itself is a powerful and unpredictable force, capable of both providing sustenance and presenting treacherous obstacles. They face the constant threat of being discovered, encountering various characters along the way, some benevolent, others overtly hostile. One of their early encounters is with a wrecked steamboat, the Walter Scott, named after the romantic novelist. This seemingly innocent discovery quickly turns into a harrowing experience when they stumble upon a group of robbers on board, demonstrating the ever-present danger lurking even in the seemingly tranquil waters. Huck, with his keen sense of self-preservation, manages to escape with Jim, but not before witnessing the brutality and moral depravity of these criminals. This incident serves as an early warning, a reminder that human evil exists independently of the civilized world, and that the river, while a path to freedom, is also a conduit for danger. They learn to navigate the river by night, hiding their raft in the dense foliage along the banks during the day, using the darkness as a cloak against discovery. This nocturnal travel adds an element of suspense and mystery to their journey, highlighting their clandestine existence. Their days are spent in relative quiet, fishing, talking, and observing the world around them, while their nights are filled with the gentle rhythm of the river and the constant vigilance required to avoid capture. The river becomes a character in itself, a symbol of both boundless freedom and inherent peril. It offers them refuge from the oppressive society on land, but it also exposes them to new forms of danger and moral challenges. As they drift further south, the sheer scale of the river and the vastness of the landscape impress upon them the enormity of their undertaking. Their reliance on each other grows with each passing mile, and their bond strengthens under the shared experience of danger and the pursuit of a common goal. This initial leg of their journey establishes the fundamental premise of the novel: a search for freedom in a world that often seems determined to deny it, and the forging of an extraordinary friendship in the face of immense adversity. As Huck and Jim continue their journey down the Mississippi, their reliance on each other deepens, and their bond strengthens with each passing challenge. Their days are filled with the mundane realities of survival fishing, scavenging, and hiding from potential pursuers, but also with profound conversations that begin to chip away at Huck's ingrained prejudices. Jim, with his innate wisdom and profound understanding of human nature, becomes more than just a runaway enslaved person. He becomes a mentor, a confidante, and a true friend to Huck. He shares stories of his family, his hopes for freedom, and his dreams of buying his children out of slavery. These personal revelations profoundly impact Huck, forcing him to confront the abstract concept of property with the very real and palpable humanity of Jim. Huck, despite his efforts to remain detached and cynical, finds himself increasingly drawn to Jim's warmth and genuine goodness. He witnesses Jim's deep affection for his family, his quiet dignity, and his unwavering moral compass, which often seems more reliable than the dictates of the civilized world. This growing empathy creates a profound moral dilemma for Huck. Society has taught him that helping a runaway enslaved person is a sin, an act punishable by eternal damnation. The prevailing social narrative dictates that Jim is property, a commodity, and that aiding his escape is morally wrong. However, Huck's lived experience with Jim contradicts these deeply ingrained beliefs. He sees Jim as a human being, a kind and compassionate man deserving of freedom. This internal conflict between the dictates of society and the stirrings of his own conscience becomes the central moral struggle of the novel. He wrestles with the right thing to do according to society versus what feels right in his heart. The fear of eternal damnation is real for Huck, instilled in him by Miss Watson's fervent religious teachings. He grapples with the idea that he might be going to hell for helping Jim, but the alternative betraying Jim and sending him back to slavery becomes increasingly unbearable. This internal struggle is a powerful representation of the individual's conscience grappling with deeply entrenched societal norms. It is a slow, painful process of unlearning prejudice and recognizing shared humanity. One significant moment illustrating this internal conflict is when Huck almost gives Jim up to slave catchers. He is torn, his mind racing with the societal expectations and the potential consequences of his actions. However, seeing Jim's terror and desperation, and recalling their shared adventures and Jim's unwavering kindness, Huck makes a snap decision that will define his moral awakening. He chooses to protect Jim. This decision, though made in a moment of crisis, is a culmination of all their interactions and the profound impact Jim has had on Huck. It is a moment of profound moral courage, where Huck defies societal norms and chooses the path of empathy and human connection, declaring that he would rather go to hell than betray his friend. This act solidifies their bond and marks a crucial turning point in Huck's journey of self-discovery and moral development. The river, in its isolation, provides the perfect crucible for this transformation, allowing Huck to shed the superficialities of civilization and connect with Jim on a purely human level. The idyllic, albeit perilous, journey on the river is once again interrupted when Huck and Jim's raft is struck by a steamboat during a thick fog, separating them and forcing Huck to swim ashore. This sudden and violent disruption underscores the unpredictable nature of their existence and the constant threat of the river itself. Washed ashore, Huck finds himself in the unfamiliar territory of the Grangerfords, a wealthy and aristocratic family who take him in, mistaking him for a lost member of another prominent local family. The Grangerfords embody a certain kind of southern gentility with their grand house, refined manners, and strict adherence to a code of honor. However, beneath this veneer of civility lies a dark and violent secret, a generations-long bloody feud with another prominent family, the Shepherdsons. This feud is a prime example of the hypocrisy and senseless violence that Twain satirizes throughout the novel. The two families attend the same church, listen to the same sermons on brotherly love, yet they continue to murder each other with a chilling lack of remorse or reason. Huck, with his innocent yet perceptive eyes, observes this senseless violence with a mixture of bewilderment and horror. He struggles to understand how people who appear so outwardly respectable can engage in such brutal and unending conflict. He witnesses the tragic deaths of several Grangerford family members, including the beautiful Emmeline Grangerford, a morbidly artistic and sensitive girl who dies young, leaving behind a room filled with her unsettling, death-obsessed artwork. The absurdity of the feud, driven by ancient grievances that no one even remembers, highlights the destructive power of blind adherence to tradition and the dangers of inherited hatred. The Grangerfords' home, initially a haven, becomes a prison for Huck, a place where he is constantly on edge, fearing for his life as the conflict escalates. He is drawn into their world, given fine clothes, and treated with a superficial kindness, but he is also a witness to their brutal reality. Amidst the chaos and violence, Huck stumbles upon Jim, who has also survived the steamboat collision and found his way to a hidden spot near the Grangerford property, aided by one of the Grangerford enslaved individuals. Their reunion is a moment of immense relief and shared understanding, a testament to their enduring bond. Jim, ever resourceful, has managed to remain hidden and safe, demonstrating his resilience and determination. The feud culminates in a bloody shootout that leaves many dead, including young Buck Grangerford, who had befriended Huck. The senseless tragedy finally convinces Huck that he must escape this violent world and return to the relative safety of the river with Jim. The Grangerford-Shepherdson feud serves as a powerful indictment of senseless violence, demonstrating how ingrained societal patterns can lead to brutal and irrational behavior. It also reinforces Huck's growing disillusionment with the civilized world, which often proves to be far more savage and hypocritical than the wild, untamed river. The river, for all its dangers, offers a more honest and morally straightforward existence than the entangled deceptions of human society. Having narrowly escaped the senseless violence of the Grangerford-Shepherdson feud, Huck and Jim are relieved to be back on the relative safety of their raft, drifting down the Mississippi. Their peace, however, is short-lived. They soon pick up two con artists who claim to be a displaced duke and a dauphin, the rightful king of France. These two characters, who are nothing more than common frauds, quickly assert their supposed aristocratic authority over Huck and Jim, demanding deference and special treatment. The elder of the two, a man in his 70s, introduces himself as the Dauphin, the long-lost son of King Louis Roman XVI, while the younger, around 30, claims to be the Duke of Bridgewater. Twain uses these characters, aptly named the Duke and the King, to satirize human gullibility and the ease with which people can be manipulated by grand claims and elaborate schemes. Their elaborate lies and pretentious airs are almost comical, yet they successfully exploit the ignorance and credulity of others they encounter. The Duke and the King are master manipulators, always on the lookout for a new scam to pull, and their arrival introduces a new element of comic absurdity and moral ambiguity to Huck and Jim's journey. They represent the worst aspects of human nature: greed, dishonesty, and a complete lack of moral scruples. Their presence on the raft is a constant source of frustration for Huck, who quickly sees through their flimsy disguises, but is powerless to stop their schemes. Jim, too, is wary of them, but their combined authority and Jim's deferential nature as an enslaved man prevent him from openly challenging them. The cons they perpetrate range from selling fraudulent tooth whitener and performing Shakespearean plays poorly to staging temperance revivals, where they collect money for their own debaucheries. Their schemes are often aimed at the most vulnerable and trusting members of society, highlighting their predatory nature. One of their most infamous cons involves the Royal Nonsuch, a wildly inappropriate and vulgar show advertised as a high-brow performance that dupes an entire town. The audience, after realizing they've been swindled, plots revenge, forcing the Duke and the King to flee in haste. This incident showcases the inherent injustice of their actions and the ease with which they escape consequences. Despite their numerous swindles, the Duke and the King never truly cause direct physical harm to Huck or Jim, but their presence continuously puts them in morally compromising situations and delays their progress towards freedom. Huck is forced to participate in some of their schemes, albeit reluctantly, which further complicates his own moral compass. He finds himself caught between his desire to protect Jim and his innate aversion to dishonesty. He grapples with the idea of what is truly right when surrounded by such rampant fraud. The two con men symbolize the pervasive dishonesty and moral corruption that Huck encounters in the civilized world, a stark contrast to the honest, albeit dangerous, simplicity of life on the river with Jim. Their constant deceptions and manipulations represent the darker side of human interaction, forcing Huck to confront the complexities of morality in a world where appearances often supersede truth. The Duke and the King, ever on the prowl for their next swindle, stumble upon the story of Peter Wilkes, a recently deceased wealthy man who has left behind a substantial inheritance for his 3 nieces and 2 estranged brothers. Seeing an opportunity for a major score, the con artists quickly hatch an elaborate plan to impersonate the brothers and claim the inheritance for themselves. The King, using his more commanding presence, pretends to be Peter Wilkes's brother Harvey, who lives in England, while the Duke masquerades as the deaf and mute brother William. Their performance is initially convincing, as they feign grief and deliver heartfelt, albeit contrived, speeches, easily deceiving the unsuspecting townspeople and the 3 innocent nieces, Mary Jane, Joanna, and Susan. Huck, forced to go along with the charade, finds himself deeply disturbed by the sheer audacity and cruelty of their deception. He witnesses firsthand the genuine sorrow of the nieces and the eager credulity of the town, and his conscience begins to prick him with increasing urgency. He develops a particular sympathy for Mary Jane, the eldest niece, who is genuinely kind and trusting. Her innocent faith in the con artists makes their deceit even more repugnant to Huck. He sees the potential for profound heartbreak and ruin that their scheme could inflict on these good people. This situation marks a significant turning point in Huck's moral development. While he has previously gone along with the Duke and the King's smaller cons, this one feels different. It is a direct attack on innocent people, and the stakes are much higher. He begins to feel a profound sense of responsibility for the nieces and a burning desire to expose the fraud and protect them. This internal conflict between his fear of the Duke and the King and his burgeoning moral compass becomes the driving force of this section of the novel. He wrestles with the consequences of revealing the truth, knowing that it could put him and Jim in grave danger. But the injustice of the situation becomes too much to bear. Huck secretly observes the two con men and overhears their conversations, gathering evidence of their deception. He discovers their plans to sell off the Wilkes' property, including their enslaved individuals, and divide the profits. This knowledge further fuels his determination to act. In a moment of courageous defiance, Huck decides to take a drastic step. He steals the money the Duke and the King have taken from the Wilkes estate and hides it in Peter Wilkes' coffin, hoping to return it to the rightful heirs and expose the fraudsters. This act is a significant risk, demonstrating Huck's growing moral strength and his willingness to defy authority when faced with profound injustice. The situation becomes even more complicated when the real Harvey and William Wilkes arrive, creating a chaotic scene and a desperate scramble for proof. The townspeople are thrown into confusion, unable to determine who the genuine heirs are. The con artists, trapped and desperate, try to maintain their facade, but the evidence of their fraud begins to mount. Huck, in his attempts to help, inadvertently creates more chaos, leading to a series of comedic yet tense situations that highlight the absurdity of the situation. The entire Wilkes episode is a powerful indictment of human greed and gullibility, and it further solidifies Huck's disillusionment with the so-called civilized world. He sees how easily people can be deceived and how quickly they can turn on each other. It also showcases Huck's transformation from a passive observer to an active participant in rectifying injustice, demonstrating his evolving sense of right and wrong. Following the chaotic unraveling of the Wilkes inheritance scam, the Duke and the King manage to escape, narrowly avoiding the wrath of the enraged townspeople. To Huck's dismay, they catch up with him and Jim on the raft, and their journey continues. But the atmosphere is now thick with distrust and resentment. The con artists are more paranoid and desperate than ever, and Huck is constantly wary of their next move. Their presence on the raft continues to delay Huck and Jim's progress towards freedom, and the endless string of scams and deceptions takes a heavy toll on Huck's spirit. He longs for the simple, honest freedom of the river with just Jim, free from the manipulative schemes of the two villains. The climax of their shared journey with the Duke and the King arrives in a pivotal moment of profound betrayal. The King, in a fit of drunken desperation, sells Jim to a local farmer named Silas Phelps for a paltry $40, believing he can easily escape the consequences. This act is the ultimate betrayal, a devastating blow to Huck, who has come to view Jim not as property, but as his closest friend and companion. Jim, innocent and unsuspecting, is taken captive, and his dreams of freedom are cruelly shattered. This sale is a direct challenge to Huck's moral awakening. He is confronted with the stark reality of Jim's enslaved status and the brutal consequences of a society that treats human beings as commodities. The anguish Huck feels is immense, and it forces him to confront his deepest convictions. He wrestles with the societal conditioning that tells him he should be relieved, that he has done his duty by not helping a runaway enslaved person. However, his heart rebels against these ingrained beliefs. He cannot bring himself to abandon Jim. In a moment of profound moral clarity and self-sacrifice, Huck makes a decision that will forever define his character and his moral journey. He tears up the letter he had written to Miss Watson, confessing Jim's whereabouts and effectively returning him to slavery. This act is a conscious rejection of the civilized world's morality and a full embrace of his own burgeoning conscience. He declares, "All right then, I'll go to hell," signifying his willingness to defy societal norms and face eternal damnation if it means saving Jim. This is the moral zenith of the novel, a powerful testament to the transformative power of empathy and friendship. It is the moment Huck truly breaks free from the shackles of societal expectations and chooses a path dictated by his own sense of right and wrong. His decision to rescue Jim, even at the cost of his own soul, elevates him from a mere boy to a moral hero. Determined to rescue Jim, Huck sets out to the Phelps farm, unaware that this is a fateful encounter with his past. He is mistaken for Tom Sawyer, who is expected to visit his Aunt Sally and Uncle Silas Phelps. This accidental identity swap creates a new layer of complication and provides an opportunity for Tom Sawyer to re-enter the narrative. The stage is now set for the novel's final, complex act, where Huck's individual morality will clash with Tom's adventurous, yet often insensitive, approach to problem solving. Arriving at the Phelps farm, Huck is immediately mistaken for Tom Sawyer, the Phelps' nephew, who is expected for a visit. This unexpected turn of events, while initially confusing, provides Huck with a golden opportunity to infiltrate the farm and devise a plan to free Jim. He quickly embraces the mistaken identity, playing along with Aunt Sally and Uncle Silas, who are kind but rather naive. The irony of the situation is not lost on Huck, as he finds himself in a position of authority due to a case of mistaken identity, a stark contrast to his usual status as an outcast. However, this seemingly fortunate turn of events soon takes a complicated twist when the real Tom Sawyer arrives. Instead of exposing Huck, Tom, with his characteristic love for elaborate schemes and dramatic flair, decides to join in the deception. He pretends to be his own brother, Sid Sawyer, and together, the two boys embark on their most elaborate and ultimately problematic adventure, orchestrating Jim's escape. Tom's approach to freeing Jim is starkly different from Huck's pragmatic and heartfelt desire for Jim's immediate freedom. Tom, driven by a romanticized vision of adventure and a desire to emulate the heroic figures from his favorite novels, insists on making Jim's escape as elaborate and regular as possible, complete with unnecessary obstacles, cryptic messages, and fanciful props. He insists on digging a tunnel with knives, even though a pickaxe would be far more efficient, writing messages in blood, and providing Jim with all the accoutrements of a romantic prisoner's escape. He even encourages Jim to tame rats and snakes to add to the dramatic effect. Huck, with his grounded common sense, finds Tom's schemes frustratingly impractical and dangerous, often arguing for simpler, more direct methods. He is driven by a genuine concern for Jim's safety and freedom, while Tom seems more interested in the theatricality of the escape. This stark contrast highlights the fundamental differences between Huck's evolving morality and Tom's adherence to superficial adventure. Huck's maturity and deepening empathy are juxtaposed against Tom's lingering childishness and his inability to grasp the gravity of Jim's situation. The elaborate escape plan drags on for weeks, causing unnecessary stress and danger for Jim, who patiently endures Tom's absurd demands. The sheer absurdity of Tom's plan serves as a powerful satire of romantic literature and its often detrimental influence on real-world situations. Twain uses this section to critique the frivolousness of those who prioritize entertainment over genuine human suffering. The escape attempt culminates in a chaotic scene. As Jim finally makes his break, he is shot in the leg by a farmer. Tom, in a moment of genuine concern, insists on getting a doctor for Jim, even at the risk of exposing their scheme. This act reveals a glimmer of humanity in Tom, but it also underscores the recklessness of his prior actions. Jim, despite his injury and the immense personal risk, selflessly helps the doctor care for Tom, who is also injured in the pursuit, demonstrating his unwavering loyalty and compassion. The entire escape plot, while full of comedic elements, ultimately serves to highlight the tragic reality of Jim's captivity and the moral failings of a society that allows such cruelty to persist. The reveal of Miss Watson's death and her freeing of Jim in her will, which Tom knew all along but withheld for the sake of his adventure, is the final, heartbreaking blow. This revelation exposes Tom's profound insensitivity and his willingness to toy with Jim's freedom for his own amusement, further emphasizing the depth of Huck's moral growth in contrast. Jim is finally free, but the path to his freedom was unnecessarily prolonged and complicated by Tom's self-serving desire for adventure. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn concludes with Jim's hard-won freedom and Huck's profound realization that he cannot return to the confines of civilization. The revelation that Miss Watson had freed Jim in her will, a fact Tom Sawyer had known all along, exposes the ultimate irony and the moral bankruptcy of Tom's elaborate escape scheme. Jim's freedom, which was ultimately granted by a societal institution, rather than achieved through the dangerous and drawn-out plans, serves as a poignant commentary on the arbitrary nature of liberty in a flawed society. For Jim, the promise of reuniting with his family and living as a free man is finally within reach, a testament to his resilience and unwavering hope. Huck, however, cannot simply return to the life he left behind. He has witnessed too much, learned too much, and grown too much to ever conform to the stifling expectations of polite society. His journey down the Mississippi has has been far more than a physical adventure. It has been a profound moral education. He has seen the best and worst of humanity, encountered both genuine kindness and profound cruelty, and grappled with complex ethical dilemmas that have reshaped his understanding of right and wrong. His conscience, once largely unformed and susceptible to societal conditioning, has been forged in the crucible of his experiences with Jim. He has come to understand that true morality lies not in blind adherence to rules or societal norms, but in empathy, compassion, and a courageous commitment to what is just and humane. His decision to light out for the territory, to escape the very civilization that sought to civilize him, is the ultimate affirmation of his newfound independence and his rejection of a world he finds hypocritical and oppressive. He chooses a life of continued freedom, unburdened by the constraints and contradictions of established society. This ending is not a neat resolution, but rather an open-ended continuation, suggesting that the search for true freedom and self-discovery is an ongoing journey. Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn remains an enduring masterpiece precisely because of its unflinching examination of these profound themes. It is a powerful indictment of slavery and racial prejudice, a biting satire of human folly and hypocrisy, and a timeless exploration of individual conscience versus societal conformity. Through Huck's innocent yet perceptive narration, Twain challenges readers to question their own preconceived notions of morality and justice. The novel's controversial language, while challenging, is essential to its historical authenticity and its critical message, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable realities of America's past. The enduring impact of Huckleberry Finn lies in its ability to spark uncomfortable conversations and encourage critical thinking about the very foundations of American society. It reminds us that true progress often comes from challenging the status quo and listening to the voices of those who have been marginalized and oppressed. Huck and Jim's journey, fraught with peril and illuminated by their evolving friendship, continues to resonate today, reminding us of the enduring power of empathy and the timeless pursuit of freedom in all its forms. It asks us, even now, what it truly means to be human and what sacrifices we are willing to make for justice and connection.